Hey guys, welcome back to How to Roll Dice. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be doing a quick little review and walkthrough of this game here, Gates of Delirium by Renegade Game Studios. However, before we can get into the review and the walkthrough of gameplay, I did want to let you know two quick things. One, I am a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan, and this is an H.P. Lovecraft flavored game. I won't say that it's a direct piece of his works because it sort of like skids around the edges of directly referencing his works, but it's as close as you can get without flat out doing it. I'm not sure why that is. I'm sure they have a reason. The other thing is this game was actually sent to me by Renegade Game Studios, and they asked me if I would be willing to review it, and I said, of course. I do want to let you know that that's not going to bias my opinion on the game in any way. In fact, I made sure that when I played it with a diverse group of people, and when I was done, I asked all of them their opinion on the game. Needless to say, they all agreed with me, and this is a spectacular game. But I will make every effort to explain the game to you in a way that you will be able to discern your own opinion by the time we're done. So, getting into the premise of the game, you play as a team of investigators who are attempting to travel around this Lovecraft-flavored region, which includes Rockport, Arkham, Innsmouth, in an effort to find several different types of artifacts. You can find map fragments and slowly reassemble lost maps. You can find missing journal pages and slowly figure out the ramblings of a madman. You can find ancient runes that slowly begin to drive you insane. And you can find gate portal pieces that allow you to open up gates to other dimensions and yank through monstrosities into your reality, which slowly rip the world into chaos. So it's, your typical H.P. Lovecraft-styled game. It is unique, however, in several different ways, both visually and in gameplay. I'll get into that in a minute. So looking at what comes with the game, you've got this lovely map right here. It is perfectly antiquated in its appearance. I really like the style, and it's, like I said, it's got some really popular, sort of recognizable locations from the Lovecraft mythos. You've got Arkham, you've got Rockport, Innsmouth, Kingsport, and Salem. You've also got a nice little point tracker on the side, labeled 1 through 40. You are going to shoot past that in most games. We actually had a couple of people almost double lap that point tracker. But one of the things I like about it already is you can see it almost looks like the scrawlings of a madman. It looks like somebody took a pencil and just scribbled out a bunch of random numbers on the side of the page. And so you're already getting into that sort of vibe of what the game is trying to portray. And that's just the beginning of it, I assure you. So beyond the board, we've got your player diary here, your sort of player journal. And that is this little cardboard tile here. And it's got some important stuff listed on it. It's basically a combination player board cheat sheet. You don't really put anything on it because this is more of a card game than it is a full-on board game. Less tokens, more cards. So you sort of tuck your cards in and around it. But it helps you keep track of some scoring options, and it helps you keep track of how you group things while you're playing the game, whether it be map fragments or lost pages or ancient runes. Each player is going to get one of those. Then you've got your player Meeples and point tracker. The nice thing about the Meeples is other than just being differentiated by color, they actually have unique shapes. So if you look at this guy right here, he's actually holding a nice little torch. Then you've got these two here. One's holding what I would guess is a spear or a walking stick, and the other's just kind of casually got her hands in her pockets. I say her because they look like they have tiny ponytails, but who knows? Could be guys with long hair. I was one of those once. And then you've got this person here who's just pointing at something. Probably terrifying. It's about to drive them insane, as the game would suggest. And then you've got these awesome color-coded, sort of unique score trackers. They all look relatively Lovecraftian and somewhat squiddy and Cthulhuoid. Especially this green one here, which is fitting. This yellow one, I can't honestly decide if it goes this way or this way. But I go this way because that allows it to stand up, so that's my preference. And they're ancient creatures of chaos from a non-Euclidean geometry. They can be shaped however you choose. So flip it upside down, flip it sideways, doesn't matter. Spin it inside out and backwards. It's still going to work inside of the story. Beyond these wooden meeple tokens that you have, you've also got some standard cardboard tokens over here. You've got what are called desperation tokens, used for taking desperate actions, something you're definitely going to want to do throughout the game. That's this guy right here. And then you've got these score sort of assistant tokens that are marked 40 on one side and 80 on the other. And that is, like I said, because you're going to be lapping this track if you're playing anywhere near decent in the process of getting through a game. It's very easy to score points in large chunks. Moving on to the cards, we've got the action cards. Action cards are in one large deck that everybody draws through, and they've got kind of a unique design to them. They've got a double-sided face. So if you look here, You've got a white half and a black half, or a light half and a dark half, whatever you want to call it. That is the light being sane and dark being insane part of the card. Depending on how your round has been established by player one, you're either going to be playing sane or insane actions. And so every card has both action types, and you're simply going to use the one that matches the type of round that you're in. There is a way to change that mid-round. We'll get into that. So as far as action cards go, they all have 2 parts, and each part has multiple options. So you're going to see a lot of diversity amongst those, and those feed into the visual mechanics of the game, which I'll come back to in a minute. Then you've got these here. These are your gate cards. These are multicolored gate pieces that you sort of collect throughout the game and use to assemble gates in the various locations on the map. And when you complete gates, you get to yank monstrosities through into the world, which drive the game towards its end state, but also gain you a ton of points. You've got those very monstrosity tokens right here. They've got lovely, horrific art on them. I'll just show you a few. You know, stuff of nightmares. Stuff you really want from a Lovecraft-style game. You've got those. Those all have point values on them as well, ranging from 10 to 15, I believe. You've got these lovely scroll cards here. Scrolls are a unique mechanic. They kind of change the rules of the game midway through the game and continue to change it as the game proceeds every time monstrosities are pulled through a gate, or nearly every time a monstrosity is pulled through a gate. And you've got this lovely sane, insane token right here. This is actually, I believe, on wood. And you've got the sane side and the insane side. And like I said, that's used for tracking what type of round that you're in. And then you've got a lovely rulebook right here, which I'm not going to go through because honestly, the game is easy enough to remember that I should be able to go over this without looking at the book at all. Of course, now I'm going to flub that, but let's do our best. So, looking at the action cards, because I want to give you a bit of a breakdown of the variety of what you can get here before I get into how you can play. One of the things that you can collect during a sane turn are map fragments. And the cool thing about this game is that it tries to be very visual with its components. You don't just collect cards that say map fragment on them and say, oh, I got 4 map fragments and it takes 4 map fragments to make a map, so I completed the map. I earned 12 points, and you stick those 4 cards off to the side, la-di-da, in a pile, who cares? No, no, no. This game actually wants you to assemble the map. So the map fragments are going to be marked NE, SE, SW, or NW, northeast, southwest, southeast, northwest. I don't know why I garbled those so poorly. But when you assemble those 4 map fragments, and let's see if I can hold this up in a way that makes it in any way recognizable to you guys, you actually assemble a map, which is really awesome. I don't know how well the camera picks it up, but it's a pretty detailed map of the area, so that's pretty awesome. And then once you've assembled the map, you can kind of just lay your pieces out off to the side in front of you, and you can assemble multiple maps throughout the process of a game, but you get to lay your map out in front of you off to the side, and you can, occasionally glance over it and go, oh look, there's the map I put together. There it is, physically, right there. I can look at it. All the other players can see it. You made that map. You found the pieces. That's pretty cool. Same thing with runes. When you actually start finding and collecting runes, you'll notice that each of them actually has a unique sort of symbol carved into them. That shape that's inside of the red gem-like material. And so as you're collecting them, you want to collect sets of 5. You're actually noticing that there's like this unique alphabet carved into them, and it's like you're actually finding different pieces of this collection of runes. Same thing with the lost pages, which are sort of lost scribblings of a madman. Not only are they numbered 1 through, I think, 22, that's the number of pages, and ideally you want to collect them in sequential order because you get bonus points for doing that, but they all have sort of unique flavor text scrawled on them. One minor complaint that I do have about the game is that this font specifically, the one that's used on these cards and in some sections of the rulebook for little flavor scriptures, it's a little hard to read. I get that they were going for sort of, form over function here. They wanted to look cool. They weren't so worried about it being easily legible, but it's right on the edge of actually being too hard to read. There were a few sections that I got to in the book, and I was like, I bet that says something cool, but I'm just going to gloss past it because I don't feel like staring at it for 30 seconds trying to figure out exactly what it says. So they could have toned that down a little bit, but it does fit with the style of the rest of the game. It looks very much like real hand scribblings, so that fits. The gates have an amazing, amazing visual mechanic to them. As you're assembling gate pieces, they're going to have a number and a location on them as well as be color-coded. So for example, Kingsport says 5 in the upper corner and Kingsport at the top, and it's orange. And if you look at the actual body of the art there, you're going to notice a right angle. That right there, that right angle corner. that's actually letting you know how to assemble the five gate pieces that you need to open a gate in Kingsport. Let me move this out of the way and I'll show you exactly what I mean. This might be a little hard to hold up, so hopefully you can see it on the table here. But what that corner on the piece actually means is when you get another Kingsport piece, you're going to take it and you're going to align the corner of that new piece with that corner on the first card. You can see I did that there. And you can look at the edge of that dark circle, that opening of the gate, and you can see it's actually forming a longer circle. It's completed more of the circle. Now, I will be honest, I preemptively stacked this deck so that I could show you guys a real example of how this works, but as you add more and more pieces going around, you're actually going to complete the gate. And when you're done, you will have a physical circular gate sitting in front of you on the board, which is one of the coolest things I have ever seen as far as simple card mechanics in a board game goes. Let's see if I can hold this boy right here. So you've actually made the gate, and that's awesome. I've never seen something quite so cool and yet so simple. And then you get to put the gate down in front of you, and again, just like the maps, everybody kind of gets to look at it and go, well, there's your gate physically in front of you. We can see it. You did it. Depending on where you're opening the gate, there's going to be a different number of cards that you need. So for example, Innsmouth requires 7. So you're going to take 7 cards to actually complete the circle. So obviously they're adjusting the angle of that right angle corner that's on the card so that as you line them all up, it takes 7 cards to make a circle as opposed to taking 5 or 6, which is what some of the other locations require. So that's really cool. Let me pop these back down here so when I get to those I can explain them properly. I've lost them now. Alrighty. So, getting into the actual gameplay, because I've gooed and god over the actual components of the game for long enough now. The game is pretty simple to set up. Each player is going to select a color and the matching meeples and score tracker and player board. So let's just go with orange here because I've already got my lovely meeples laid out in front of me. You get 10 investigators, that's these guys right here, and 1 score tracker that you're going to put at the top of the board to start because you haven't quite scored any points yet. You're also going to draw 5 cards from the action deck. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are yours. You can look at them. It's your hand. Just keep them secret. And you're always going to have 5 cards in your hand because every turn you're required to play 2, and then you draw 2 at the end of your turn. So you're always going to have 5 moving from one turn to the next. During your turn, you're going to take actions off of the action cards based off of whether or not you're in a sane or an insane round. That's going to be determined by player 1. Player 1 is going to be handed this token, and you can choose player 1 randomly, however you like. Player 1 is going to be handed this token which says sane or insane, and they're going to choose what type of round you're in. So if they say sane, there are 3 types of sane actions that you can take off of the cards. One sane action is to gather a map fragment. So you'd simply take this map fragment and you'd put it into play in front of you, and boom, I've got a northeast map fragment and I'm working on my first map. You work on 1 map at a time, you work on 1 gate at a time of each color, and you work on collecting runes in a stack. I'll get into that in a minute. So that's my first action. Now I want to play my second action. I've got another map piece here that's southwest. Great. I could play that and add it to this map and be halfway done with that map. Scoring a full map is worth 12 points, so that's pretty awesome. Or I could collect a lost page from the Diary of a Madman. This is page number 8, and as I mentioned, I think there are 22 pages, and you want to collect them in succession if you can. So if I find 8 and then I find 7, those 2 pages are worth 4 apiece as opposed to 2 apiece. If I then find 9, that's also worth 4 apiece. But then if I find 12 and I don't fill that gap in the middle by the end of the game, that 12 is only worth 2 points. So they're worth double if they're in order, which is pretty nice. And the third action that you can take, which I unfortunately did not draw any of here, would be this right here. This is the sort of place or dispatch investigators action. If you look in the upper left corner of this card here, you'll see a tiny investigator symbol, and you'll also see a little, you'll see a little red dot next to it. I don't know why my camera wants to focus on my hand. Yeah, tiny investigator, tiny red dot. That red dot is one of these desperation tokens. So if you play a place investigator action, you place the number of investigators equal to the number of investigator symbols, and then you also gain a number of desperation tokens equal to the number of desperation tokens and symbols. This is 1 investigator and 1 desperation token. So I would take 1 investigator, I would stick it anywhere I like on the map. It doesn't matter if it's a location that already has other investigators on it from other players. There is no fighting. There is a little bit of trickery that you can do with one of your insane actions. I'll get into that in a minute, but you don't actually do any damage to to each other or anything like that. In fact, you want to have multiple players on a region when that region scores, which is when a gate opens there, because there can be a first, a second, and a third player as far as points earned who are in that territory when it scores. And I'll get into that. The gameplay, like I said, is very smooth and very even and easy to follow. There's a little bit to take in here at the beginning, but then once you get going, it's very simple. So those are the 3 actions that you can take on a sane turn. You can play a map fragment, you can play a journal, a lost page, or you can play a card that allows you to place 1 or 2 investigators onto the map and gain 1 or 2 desperation tokens. And I'll get into desperation tokens after I go through the insane options. The insane options are the dark halves of the cards, and those can be used during an insane round. Insane options are, just like on the sane side, a total of 3. So you can gain or find a rune. With runes, you're looking to find stacks of 5. They don't have to match or anything like that. You're just looking to have stack of 5, stack of 5, stack of 5. Every time you complete 5, you can start a new stack. You can also, this symbol right here, is gain a gate, and you can see that says the little flame there is 1 gate, and then the red dots next to that are desperation tokens. So this would be choose 1 gate piece. You can either take 1 of the 4 off of the board or 1 off the top of the stack blindly. And then you would gain 2 desperation tokens. So gain 1 of those, gain a rune, or you can do what's called a swap. And again, let me see if I can find one of those right here. So this is actually called converting. So if you look right here, see this little arrow symbol? That's the converting symbol. So what that means is that you're actually going to take 1 of your investigators, and say another player had an investigator right here. You take 1 of your guys, you put it there, you give them theirs back. So you're basically converting 1 of theirs into 1 of yours. One quick little note, you can convert even if you don't have any investigators left off of the board. You simply move an investigator. So say all my investigators were on the board and I played a convert card. I could take an investigator from anywhere on the board and simply swap it with that investigator instead of kicking their investigator off the board entirely. So the card doesn't become useless just because you've progressed further into the game and you have more people on the board. So those are your 3 insane options. You can corrupt an investigator by popping 1 of theirs off and popping 1 of yours on. You can gather a rune, or you can collect or assemble a gate piece. And you can play like cards for your 2 cards, so you can collect 2 gate pieces. Hell, if you play the right cards, you can collect 4 gate pieces. You could put 4 investigators onto the board if you happen to have 2 double investigator cards during a sane turn. There's nothing that says you can't play a certain type of card more than once. And then at the end of your turn, you draw 2. The only interrupt is if you have opened a gate successfully. So let's get into opening gates, because that's kind of what drives the end state of the game. If you collect all of the pieces of a gate that you need to make that complete circle, and like I said, they're numbered. Kingsmith is 5, Rockport is 5, Arkham is 6, Innsmouth is 7, and I believe Salem is 6 as well. I'm not sure. Salem is green. Let's see if I can find one real quick. Probably not. Yes, Salem is 6. So if you collect all the pieces that you need to complete that awesome circle and open the gate up, you immediately pause, even if it's in the middle of your turn, and you sort of resolve score that location. So each location, and I'll hold this up so that you can see it, has 3 numbers underneath its name. Those numbers are how many points the top 3 players score when that location scores. And so if you have 1 player that has 5 investigators there, 1 player that has 3, and 1 player that has 1, those players are going to score those 3-point values first, second, and third. If you have a tie, the tied players score the same amount. You don't divide the amount, and then you continue scoring, in proper order based on the number of investigators there per player. Nobody scores if there are no investigators there, and you cannot score any points if you have none. So say you're in a 3-player game and both other players have investigators there and that location scores, the 3rd player doesn't by default get the 3rd place value. They get none because they had no investigators there. So you have to be there to score. So you get all your pieces for your gate, the gate opens, boom, you grab the top monstrosity card off the monstrosity stack. They go in order, numbered 10 through 15. And if that monstrosity has a little scroll symbol in the bottom corner next to the number, you're also going to reveal a scroll. The scrolls are these guys right here. There are a total of 7 in the box. You're going to randomly place 3 or 2 in a 2-player game underneath the board at the beginning of the game without looking, and then you put the remainders back in the box. If your monstrosity has a scroll, you flip over the first scroll and read it out loud, and that's a new rule that comes into play and lasts the rest of the game. So by the end of the game, you'll have 3 new scrolls. Every other monstrosity that comes out flips a scroll over. So this is Desperate Times. Each time you take a desperate action, which I haven't gotten to yet, but I will, you spend 1 less desperation token. So now all of the desperation actions are cheaper. That's awesome. So you leave that scroll face up right here so that everybody can keep an eye on it. And you continue with resolving the location here. So like I said, say for example we resolved Innsmouth, player 1 would get 10 points, player 2 would get 7 points, and player 3 would get 5 points. On top of that, player 1 also got the points from the monstrosity they pulled. So that would be 10 for this first one. Obviously they increase as you go further through the game. If this was the last monstrosity, we would stop right here, but it's not. So I gain 10 points. On top of that, I gain 10 points. So now I'm up 20 points. I take my marker and I put it on the 20 here. The other players get, whatever points they scored for having additional investigators there, but less than me. And then everybody removes all of their investigators from the location that just scored and put them back in their little inventory here. And then you proceed with your turn. So if that was the first action of my turn that completed that gate and allowed all that to happen, I still take the second action of my turn after that, and then I draw my 2 cards and player turn passes to the next person. So completing gates is, I think, by far the best way to get points. Other ways to get points, like I mentioned, completed maps, that's 12. Finding stacks of 5 runes is 16, and that sort of breaks down into different clusters if you don't quite have a stack of 5 at the end of the game. That's both on the large map board and your player board listed right here. And then let's get into, really quickly before we wrap up, how desperation tokens work and desperate actions. There are 4 desperate actions that you can take. They are listed right here. So you can swap 2 action cards for 2 desperation tokens. So you basically take them out of your available pool that you've earned from playing various cards, you put them back in the sort of stockpile, and you get to swap 2 action cards. First you draw 2, then you discard 2. So it can be the 2 that you just drew, or it can be 2 other cards that were in your hand. Then you can refresh the gate supply. That's these 4 cards right here. So basically you would take these 4, you would dump them, and you would put 4 new cards out, hoping to find a gate type that you were actually looking for. That costs 3. Then you can flip the sanity disc. This is a fun one. So if you're on an insane turn and you want it to be a sane turn and it comes to you, you can just flip the disc over. You can even flip the disc over in the middle of your turn after having taken your first action. So you can get really kind of combo-y with this. You can take a sane action and then boom, spend your desperation tokens to take a desperate action, flip it over, and take a different action type, which normally is not something that you can pull off. And then finally, and that's for 4 points. And then finally for 5 points, you can actually just flat out score 3 victory points. So if I was at 20 right now and I happen to have a bunch of desperation tokens burning a hole in my pocket, I can just say, oh, here's 5, back to the bank, 1, 2, 3, and I'm now up. That's it. So desperation tokens obviously allow you to sort of stack your hand, sort of give yourself the benefit, stack the gate options, gain free victory points. They're pretty powerful. They're the utility of the game, I feel. And so that's pretty much how the game works. You go around the table. Every time you've completed the round, you pass the sanity disc to the person to your left. They choose which side, sane or insane. Everybody keeps their hand up at 5. You go about collecting runes and collecting map fragments and assembling maps and finding lost pages and assembling your gates to yank out monstrosities. And as soon as the monstrosity pile empties out and the last monstrosity is pulled off of that, that's the end of the game. Everybody stops and tallies up how many points they have. People will probably likely have looped this 40-point track at least once. You'll have collected points from things that you've assembled, places that you've been at when they've resolved, monstrosities that you've pulled out, stacks of runes, all different kinds of stuff. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most victory points wins. So it's straightforward to play. It has a lot of components to it, but I feel like the bulk of components is because they're trying to make it so visual, and it really comes through. I took a couple of pictures while we were playing. Hopefully I'll put them somewhere in this video. And the game just looks beautiful when it's out on the table. You look around and you see like 2 open gates over here and an open gate over there and a map completed here and a half map over here and a whole collection of runes in this place. And It's just a very visual game, and it really brings the aesthetic to life. The gameplay is simple and flowing, and it moves very quickly from one player to the next. The actions aren't complex, but there are options to what you can do during your turn, so it doesn't feel so streamlined that it's boring, but it does feel like you're not having to do a ton of mathematical equations to determine what to do next. It's often obvious which one or two options works best for you at that given moment, but then as you observe what happens with other players, where investigators are going on the board, who's opening what kind of gates, you have to start to shift your plan. It's just a lot of fun. We've really enjoyed it. And so I would absolutely recommend that if you have the opportunity to pick up Gates of Delirium or give it a try at a friend's house or at a convention, you absolutely do so. We had a lot of fun with it. I could see replaying this game quite a bit. Also, did I mention the entire game, assuming you feel pretty comfortable with the rules, takes about 45 minutes? That's setup and gameplay. This game takes no time to set up compared to some other H.P. Lovecraft-based games. If you've ever played Mansions of Madness or Arkham Horror the board game, even Arkham Horror the card game, those games take 20 to 40 minutes to set up, and then gameplay can be so complex and frustrating that you wish you never had. This game takes minutes to set up and then less than an hour to play through. You could easily get through 2 or 3 sessions in a night if you had a group of friends that were really enjoying themselves, and I'm sure you will. So if you guys are looking for a different style of Lovecraft game that's an awesome mix of visual mechanics and unique gameplay, absolutely give this game a try. Other than that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this review. If you haven't yet, go down below and subscribe. Make sure you set your notification bell to all. That way you'll get pinged every time I upload a video, which is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with a live Let's Play on Saturday evenings. Most of the time, I should say that I'll actually be going on vacation this upcoming week, so I will be sort of MIA for a few days, but I'll try to have some videos sort of pre-queued so that you guys don't miss anything. And short of that, leave a like or a dislike, however you felt about the video, and if you have time, leave a comment. I'll try to get back to you. And I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.